Hello, and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own worldviews. However, in this episode, we're taking a look back at some previous episodes. You'll hear clips that were recorded in my first year of podcasting, specifically between February 13th, 2021 and July 18th, 2021. In the next couple of episodes, we'll be looking back at episodes from years 2 and 3 as I close out my fourth year of podcasting. I hope you enjoy these episodes and their different format while I catch up on different things in my personal life. It's important to realize that these episodes were not recorded within the last few weeks like my regular episodes. Things these guests stated at the time may not be a fully accurate representation of how they are today, but I wanted to pull different stories and life experiences for today's episode. There are clips of varying lengths from 5 different episodes, and I hope that if you haven't heard these episodes, you give the archives a chance to hear their entire stories, or if you've heard them before, give them another listen, and you might find joy in recalling back to when you first listened to that episode. The first clip comes from my 23rd and most popular episode, which was with Kelly Kraut, a former political candidate in Arkansas. In this episode, we spoke about campaign life, being a mom, and a foster parent. In this clip, Kelly had just shared that she used to be very conservative, but over the period of 7 to 10 years, she moved from one side of the spectrum to the other politically. And would you be able to or willing to share some of those beliefs that changed and a little bit of that personal process?
For sure. I think part of what started it is I actually was not raised super conservative. One of my parents is pretty liberal. Actually, the other one's pretty moderate. But I was sort of raised in that, we don't really do a whole lot of. I don't remember my parents talking about politics. Maybe they did, but I wasn't paying attention to that. And it was one of those more polite things, like we don't ask people who they voted for. And then as we've grown up, it's gotten more open. A lot of people have anyway. But when I was a teenager, my friend group was really involved in a pretty conservative youth group. And I just sort of fell in with this group of friends and just kind of became very conservative. And that's just such a moldable age. And whatever I was being taught there, I just sort of absorbed and didn't question it because I trusted everybody who was talking to me. So I don't really feel like I made those decisions myself as far as becoming super conservative. And like I said, I was not particularly political, but hindsight, I can look back and be like, oh, 20-year-old me definitely would have voted Republican, because I didn't know really what I was thinking at the time. But then in my mid to late 20s, and I started meeting more people who were not like me, who were not the same color as me, who identified as, part of the LGBTQ plus community, I realized that my belief systems were really hurtful to some of these communities. And I consider myself a very loving and kind person. And that is the basis of Christianity. And I thought, this doesn't settle to me. So I'm going to have to tear this all down, start from scratch and figure out what I think for myself. And it was quite a process. I did a lot of reading and listening to voices that weren't like mine and just seeking out different opinions and just sort of landed, like I said, on the other side of the spectrum.
Awesome. I appreciate your willingness to share that. And I know you've shared a little bit of it on TikTok as well. I think it, having a moment where you could be introspective about that is really important. So I think it's great that you're able to share that.
Definitely. I think one of the other really big things that's worth noting as far as for people in my area in the Republican Party is abortion is a really, really huge issue. And a lot of people are single issue voters over abortion. And that's a difficult thing for people to discuss in the Christian community. And it was a difficult thing for me to grapple with in the beginning as well, because again, 20-year-old Kelly would have thought very differently about this. But when we get to like critically thinking, okay, like why is abortion a problem? Well, abortion is a problem because we've got people who are experiencing unplanned pregnancies. We've got people who are experiencing systemic poverty, who don't have the resources. We've got people who are not educated as to how people get pregnant. And I know that people literally can't believe that when they hear it, but it is just true. We need comprehensive sex education. The research is astounding if you wanted to dive into that. The pregnancy rates elsewhere are so much lower where there's comprehensive sex education. And so I am not pro abortion, but I am pro, hey, let's prevent unplanned pregnancies. And that's one of the things that I try to do on TikTok is, hey, let's gather where we can have some common interests. I'm not going to sit here and argue the morality of abortion with you, because we're not going to get anywhere with that. But if we can both agree, hey, nobody wants more abortions. Like, I don't know those people. So let's just put the motivations aside and focus on the shared goal. And the way we achieve that goal is education, prevention, access to healthcare, that kind of stuff. And so trying to make it a less polarizing conversation, hopefully, has been helpful. But that's a big part, a big concern about people around here.
The next episode was with Kevin Maxon, who more recently made headlines for being the first openly gay NFL coach. Kevin and I grew up together, and in this episode, he talked about hometown life and what it was like to get to the NFL. In this clip, he talks about being a strength and conditioning coach and how that works during an NFL game. So what is it that you do on a daily for working in strength and conditioning? What is that job and field like?
It's a lot more than what I think people expect. It's not. I think there's a negative idea of a strength and conditioning coach where we're just guys who drink energy drinks and coffee and yell all day. That's really not what that's about. The farthest from the truth. Now there are guys like that. I don't know if they're the best strength and conditioning coaches. It's a lot of different things. There's a lot of science based to it. There's a lot of technology to it. There's a lot of actual technical hands-on to it. And then there's the not so objective understanding human nature, understanding how to connect and relate to people. But really, like, I'll just walk through this past week, and it's different because we're a brand new staff. Head coach is new. Head strength coach is new. I think there's maybe one or two strength coaches who are from the last coach. So we're really just trying to get everything set for when the players come back. So the typical day is we're probably there. I'm usually there around 5:30, and I'll train for about an hour and a half, and then start setting up the weight room when guys get in around 8. So we all kind of help just set up, like, hey, today's a lower body day. What do we got? All right, so let's put the bench or the bars up so they can squat, things like that. It's a lot different just setup wise in the NFL than college. In college, you can tell a 19-year-old kid, hey, go set your bench up. When you're coaching a 9-year veteran in the NFL, you can't really tell him, hey, go do this, because he's going to say, I'm not going to do it. And you're going to say, oh, okay. So we'll do that, and then we'll be on the floor coaching usually 8:30 to 11:30. So the coaching portion of the day is very, very small in the NFL. In college, you can be coaching 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So I'm very fortunate that the actual time on your feet coaching is like you can get it done pretty quickly because the roster is half the size. So then after that, it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of, like I said, being on the computer. Right now I'm researching some velocity-based training mechanisms so it can track bar speed and power output. So trying to load all of our formulas, load all of our workouts, figure out the best scope to use when we're thinking about bar speed and power, and how we can use that to manage guys from March to middle of November when it's week 14 and we have guys who have been busting their butts all year. So there's a lot of work on that. And then usually around 5 o'clock, Coach Meyer will come down and we'll have like a full staff meeting about what direction we're going in, what have we accomplished, what do we need from him. So it's a very productive work environment. There's a lot of room for us to grow, especially me as a younger coach, having the opportunity to say, hey, coach, I want to go to South Carolina to visit this coach. Yeah, go do it. Come back with great information. So it's really, it's fun. It's exciting. Like it's as a younger guy, like I get to go not only coach for some guys who I look up to, but now I get to go visit. It's encouraged and expected that I go visit them. So it's really great. It's a really, we have such a big upside, I think, but down here, just in terms of us as individual coaches and as a program. So yeah, it's a lot, but you enjoy it. You really do love what you're doing, and to be able to add value to the individual players, to the organization, and to have that mindset, hey, we're going to be the best strength and conditioning program in the entire National Football League. That's a pretty cool motivator. And when you have your boss is telling you, hey, yeah, you're right, we are going to be, do whatever you need to do to make that happen, is pretty exciting. I don't think that happens in a lot of other, not just in strength and conditioning, but just in work in general. It's hard to have everybody aligned on that exact same path of where we want to go. So that's very special and exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like there's definitely a lot going on. What do you do, like when the season starts back up in the fall, what will your role be like during gameplay?
Hopefully there's games. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID. We don't know whose role is going to be what. But I can go back more towards last year at Vanderbilt, what my role on game day was. Basically, we just have to make sure that guys are where they have to be when they have to be it. So if we're on offense and it's third down, hey, punt team's got to be ready to go on the field. Or if it's, again, we're on defense and it's second and long and we need a certain package or personnel group on the field, hey, we're so-and-so. I got him. I know where he is. So it's basically babysitting, more or less, making sure guys are paying attention, guys are involved in the game, kind of helping with what do the actual coaches need, what do the athletic trainers need, what does equipment need, and we're kind of the ones that are making everything, connecting all the pieces, so to speak.
Next up, when I spoke to Mirinda Kossoff, there were heavy topics that she touched on in her book, but we spoke about travel and different cultures. This clip is from that part of the conversation. So can you talk a little bit, with all of your travel, some of the different cultures that you've experienced?
Yes. I think one of my most memorable trips was to Turkey, and I went by myself. I was in Istanbul for a week and stayed at a little boutique hotel. And the first night after I arrived, I was sitting on the roof of my hotel, which had a restaurant that served you at tables on the roof. And I looked out and I saw the moon shining on the Bosphorus, and I could hear the muezzins call to prayer and see the Blue Mosque, the famous Blue Mosque, and Hagia Sophia. You could see their spires, and they were lit up at night. And I just thought to myself, wow, it doesn't get any better than this. This is just a dream come true, and I'll never forget this. And then I went to a little town called Ibrahim Pasha in the Cappadocia region of Turkey. Cappadocia is very hilly and mountainous, and it has these strange rock formations that were over the years eroded to look like a Frosty Freeze cone of ice cream, except it was I think it was called tufa rock. But what was so interesting in Ibrahim Pasha was, well, I didn't speak any Turkish. I learned a few words to be polite. But I discovered that the people in this little village were exceptionally generous and open-handed. They were poor. And I think they lived together well because they always helped each other out. And it was interesting, the men being Muslims, the men were separated from the women, and there was a tea house in the middle of town where all the men would congregate and smoke. And at that time, I had a very short haircut. And I started greeting the women because I wanted to be friendly to these people. And I would say, merhaba, which is hi, hello. And they would turn away from me and not even look at me. And I thought, well, what's up with that? I'm being friendly here. I don't understand. And it turns out, I forgot to mention the fact that I was in Ibrahim Pasha to do a week-long art workshop. And I stayed in a cave. Two artists from the Netherlands relocated to Turkey, bought this place, and converted the caves that were in their little acreage into rooms. And it had all the modern amenities. The only problem was the ceiling shed. And they said that's why there's a net over the bed, is to catch whenever the ceiling would start falling in a little bit, like small pieces of dirt and stuff. And so everything got coated that was lying, like clothes or things lying around left in my room, had this little sheen of tufa dust all over it. So anyway, the Dutch artist that I was studying with spoke fluent Turkish as well as English, as well as her native language. And so I told her my dilemma about why why I'm getting the cold shoulder from the women in the village. And she said that one of them asked her why I didn't bring my wife. And then she realized they thought I was a man because I had very short hair. They didn't notice that this man had breasts, and this man was not wearing manly clothes, but, and they're not supposed to speak to men who aren't their husbands. So once that got straightened out, and it was a small town, so once something's out, the whole town knows about it. And so the women then were very friendly. And they raised a lot of their own food. You wouldn't think that things like tomatoes would grow so well in this powdery soil that your feet sink down into. But I went tomato picking with one of the men I met who runs a little antique and artifact shop. And he asked me if I wanted to go with him and his wife or his daughter, I can't remember which, to pick tomatoes. And they were huge, and they were the best tomatoes I've ever had. So once people knew that I liked tomatoes, they would bring me tomatoes. If I was walking down the street, a woman would hail me from her courtyard and pulls down some grapes from a grapevine and give them to me. And they were so kind and generous. I felt sad when I left. I felt that I had made some friends despite the language barrier, especially the guy who ran this little tiny, would be like a quickie stop or, one of those quick stop grocery stores, just a few things, but he always had fresh eggs. And I had a hot plate, so I cooked eggs in the morning for my breakfast. And he and I he spoke some English, and he and I had a great time going back and forth. So I was sad. He waved me away when I left. When I left on the bus, my last morning in Ibrahim Pasha. So that was a great experience, and I feel a lot of kinship with the people from that village. And I often wonder, gee, if I were to go back, would they recognize me? It's been probably 8 or 9 years since I was there. I don't think I would go to Turkey today. There's too much turmoil. yeah, it would be a little scary. And while I was there was a bombing in the capital city, which is not Istanbul. It's well, I can't call up the name of that city, but there was a terrorist bombing in the city. So my husband was concerned about that and was texting me and writing me, how far are you away from? And I said, miles, probably 1,000 miles. I had to fly to Cappadocia from Istanbul. So, and I did my first hot air balloon ride there, and we went up, I guess, almost as far as you can go without oxygen, because I could see I could almost see a curve of the landscape, and to see all those tufa stones from a great distance was wonderful. In Tahiti, the culture there is very relaxed, and I was so impressed by the tattoos that the Tahitian men wore. They were ornate and beautifully done. And of course, tattoos came from sailors who met the indigenous people and took up the art of tattooing or having themselves tattooed, because they thought it looked pretty cool too. And I almost had an ankle tattoo put on, but they told me if we do that, you won't be able to go in the water for the rest of the time you're here. I was like, no, I'm definitely going in the water. I had a little manta ray feeding experience where these giant manta rays would come up close to shore, and I held food in the flat of my palm, and their mouths would come over it like a vacuum cleaner, like they just hoovered up the food. That was very interesting. And you could pick a meal off the trees around you. There are all these fruit trees, banana trees. It was a paradise. And I went to the main island, but also to Raiatea and Huahine. And one of those islands was in the film South Pacific. And I can't remember, I think it was Raiatea. So there was that connection, because as a child, I just loved South Pacific. I listened to the music constantly. And of course, I'd seen the movie a couple of times. And to be able to see the place where it was filmed was a lot of fun.
In this next clip, I'm speaking with Kandrea Wade, who at the time was a PhD student in the Information Science Department at the University of Colorado Boulder. We spoke a lot about artificial intelligence and the entertainment industry. And so what are you learning in the realm of diversity, race, gender, that sort of research that you were talking about within the AI tech industry?
Yeah. So, I'm learning a lot about, I think a lot of us know, or we're starting to learn about the bias and discrimination that happens within AI and within these technical systems that a lot of companies and even ourselves are relying on these days. And so I think that a lot of people are starting to learn themselves, or by what you're seeing in the media, that the same type of bias and, discrimination that we have in the real world is starting to be reflected within these systems. And what I'm learning about is, why this is happening and what do we do about it? Do we do anything about it? How do we prevent it? Do we retool and rebuild the systems that already exist, or do we, scrap them and start all over again and build a better future from there? And so I'm looking at mainly right now that I've kind of done all of this preliminary work on understanding what's happening. How do we then educate the populations that are most at risk of the implications of being sorted within systems? How do we actually reach them where they're at, speak their language, and inform them and educate them about things that they typically would never hear about, which is why they often end up being most affected by the things that are happening within these systems. So that's why I'm looking at things like fine arts and media and entertainment and these informal learning techniques to be able to educate people on these very complicated topics.
And Is there a like good solution, answering the question of, do we retool everything? Do we try to change it? Do we try to make it relearn? Is there an answer?
At the moment, I mean, a lot of people have different opinions. I have to say, I don't think there is one solution. I think that a lot of it has to do with educating the user. And so I think it's a top down and bottom up issue. I think the bottom up is educating the user so they can be smarter about the decisions that they're making, about their digital footprint, where they're seen and how they're representing themselves within systems. But I think that there just needs to be also regulation coming down from the top on what is able to be done with data, what is, how capable are these systems of making real decisions that affect people's lives. And so there's the two bigger aspects there. But when it comes to what do we do about, what's happening within systems now, one of the biggest things that I usually talk about is like, do we really need AI to solve all of our problems? Do we really need computers to do things that humans sometimes we're great at doing, sometimes we're terrible at doing? Or do we just need to train those humans better? So I think the question that I'm exploring right now is I think we need to take a better look at AI being, is it really necessary in solving all of the world's problems? Or is it just like the hottest, newest, most convenient thing? Because the computing and processing power is really what the benefit is, large amounts of data very quickly, the predictive analysis that it does. But, when you have bias that's built into a system that is human bias, and now it's running at a bigger, faster speed at a higher capacity, the same problems are just now reflected at a bigger scale. So I think the question for me is, do we need to be using AI for everything?
This final clip comes from my interview with Rabbi Noyo, who referred to herself as a, quote, radically inclusive rabbi. This episode included a lot of talk around religion and identity. And when did you decide that you wanted to become a rabbi?
That's a fun question. I would come home during rabbinical school and people would say, "Oh, what are you doing these days?" And I'd say, "I'm studying to be a rabbi." And they're like, "Oh, I always knew that's what you wanted to do." And I'm like, "Really? You could have told me, because I didn't." Fresh out of college, I applied to not rabbinical school, but cantorial school, which is a school, a training for the other kind of Jewish clergy, cantors. And cantors are trained in Jewish sacred music. There are lots of different systems of chanting, holy texts, lots of different modes of chanting, daily, weekly, monthly, holiday prayers. And it's an entirely different skill set. There's some overlap, obviously, but a lot of people think that if you are a rabbi and you can sing, then you can be both the rabbi and the cantor. And that's not true. Cantors are fully fledged clergy with a different skill set. And that was originally what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to be. My three of my big passions in life are music, Judaism, and people. Being a cantor seemed to nicely encompass those three things. I was like, all right, that's clearly the job for me. Off I go to apply to cantorial school. I applied. The response was, "We like you. We see a lot of potential. We want you to work on some things and apply again in the future." In the process of working on said things, I realized, well, I shouldn't say I realized, it wasn't quite so easy. My dad was the one who suggested that I think about being a rabbi. He's like, I think you'd make a good rabbi. You should think about doing that. And I was like, no, I know what I'm doing. I don't want to have to make any decisions. This is my path. Don't distract me. But I was hanging out with a lot of rabbis and working in a Hebrew program with incoming rabbinical students. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I got about it. And I finally just was like, why not rabbi? And it was that moment was like a puzzle piece fitting into place. Like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to be that clergy. So I made the switch, capital S, And 3 years after applying to cantorial school, I applied to rabbinical school and got in.
And what was it like during your childhood, being a member of the Jewish community?
I grew up in the Reform Jewish movement. There are several movements, branches, sects, how you can call them any number of words of Judaism. Some of the main ones are Reform Judaism, Conservative, Orthodox, which Orthodox has its own like subset of different types of Orthodoxy. There's Reconstructing Judaism, there's Renewal, and they're all really different and amazing. I grew up Reform. Reform Jews are often said to be the secular movement. There's some truth to that. There are a lot of Reform Jews that do consider themselves secular, and prefer secular over religious to describe themselves. But I was a religious Reform Jew. The motto of the Reform movement is choice through knowledge. And I was like, give me that knowledge. I had aspirations to do Judaism like an Orthodox person, but because I learned about it and decided it was meaningful to me, not because God told me to. I did not ever at any point in my life do all of the same things that an Orthodox Jew would have done, but I started keeping kosher, which my family didn't do. I started keeping Shabbat in some kinds of ways. None of what I was doing was the same as if you were to ask an Orthodox Jew or a conservative Jew or any other movement, somebody from any other movement. What I was doing was not going to look like what most people were doing. But I was finding ways to make Jewish practice meaningful to me and make them work for me. And that's really what the Reform movement was all about, was making Judaism accessible and applicable for people who didn't want to do it in the same ways as other movements. I went to Hebrew College, which is not affiliated with a movement. It's a non-denominational, pluralistic institution. I identify now as non-denominational and pluralistic, but that value of meaning making from my Reform upbringing really plays a big role in the way that I do Judaism myself and in the way that I try to guide people who come to me for guidance in making practices come to life for them.
Now, it seems, I don't know, I think it can be kind of confusing possibly for someone to say, oh, I'm non-denominational and a rabbi.
Yeah.
So when people start to question that, how do you handle that?
I haven't really had anybody question, am I really a rabbi if I don't have a denomination? I think a lot of people who are Orthodox will just group anyone who's not Orthodox in the same blob and just label it Reform and be like, oh, those Reform Jews, they're not real Jews. I just want to be clear, not everybody who's Orthodox or nothing is a monolith. I still have had a lot of experiences where people who call themselves Orthodox will say that I am not Jewish because I am, quote, Reform, or I'm a woman who thinks that I'm a rabbi, but that's not a thing, so I'm not real. And I think that's really unfortunate. I think that those voices, unfortunately, tend to be a lot louder than progressive Orthodox voices. I do know that there are progressive Orthodox Jews out there who know that I'm a rabbi, respect that I'm a rabbi, and respect that my Judaism, my practice looks different from theirs and that it is still valid. Unfortunately, you'll find people who will invalidate anything different from what they know anywhere, in any religion and in any topic, really.
All right, that brings this episode to a close. I'll be providing the relevant episode titles and resources for the episodes you heard clips from today in the description. And of course, thank you for taking the time out of your day to hear some clips from some old stories. Until next time, bye.